Hey everyone, it's Michelle Dawson, Nurse Deb from Halloween Ends. You are turning into Cineifier. You can follow me on Instagram at It's Michelle Dawson. Let's sit down by the fire and chat.
Why, hello, everybody. This is Eric Voronoff, host of the Cineifier podcast, where the horror lives and you survive. I'm here with my next special guest. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Michael Schilf, and I am the writer-director of The Wolf and the Lamb.
But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here.
I'm happy to be here.
All right, yeah, definitely. And so anyways, my first question, so what inspired you to make this movie?
It all started, like, when I meet people, when I meet aspiring writers, or really any person that's an artist or a creator and they're working on something, I usually will say, or I'll ask, what's it about? And oftentimes people will start telling me, especially writers, they'll start saying, oh, it's about this person or that wants this thing and is facing these obstacles. And that's not really what it's about.
Okay.
That's what happens. And, that's sort of the difference between, I think, being an aspiring artist and being a professional. Because when someone asks you what it's about, it really should be maybe one word, possibly two. So when you ask me, what inspired me to make this movie, I have to think about what is it about? And it's about sacrifice. That's it. Okay. And of course, the characters and the plot and the obstacles and the dramatic conflicts and all of that comes from that. But the one word is the theme. A film might be, or a story, or a piece of music, whatever it is that you're creating. It might be about forgiveness. It might be about redemption. Okay. It might be about love, but it's got to be about something really, really powerful. And that's the seed that everything is fueled from. So really, it started with this idea of sacrifice. And one of my favorite novelettes is by John Steinbeck, of Mice and Men. Most people have read it, probably even in grade school or junior high. But that novel is about sacrifice. And
Okay.
The main character, George Milton, he has to sacrifice his best friend, Lenny Small, because Lenny is a danger to himself and to others around him. And Lenny's really just a gentle giant, this wonderful teddy bear of a man, but he's a massive, massive person. And he's so strong. He wants to pet the rabbits, but he kills the rabbits. He wants to touch the puppy, but he kills the puppy. He wants to stroke the pretty girl's hair, but he'll kill the pretty girl. And in the end of that novelette, George, he murders Lenny to save Lenny from being lynched by the mob. And I was thinking about sacrifice. I was thinking about that novel and how much I love that novel. And I was thinking about like how hard that would be, to actually be able to commit a mercy killing, essentially, like to sacrifice a friend to save that person, maybe from themselves or to save others from that person. And then I started thinking about like, what would be even harder than that? It's an almost impossible task to think about, like, killing your friend in order to save others from your friend, and to do this out of love. But what would be harder than a friend is a parent having to do to sacrifice their child. And I'm a parent. I got three girls, or two twin girls and a son, and I've got 3 huskies. So I'm a parent of 6 in a way.
Yeah.
But I don't think I could do it. I really don't. And so but I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to make a film about sacrifice and about the ultimate sacrifice of a parent with their own child. And the more I was trying to embrace that, the more I was fighting it, because I just couldn't believe that a parent could do it if the child was still human. And so then I started thinking about, well, what if that child becomes more of a monster than a man, right? What happens if the child becomes something other than human? Then would the parent be able to do it? And that was the answer, yes, right? And so in The Wolf and the Lamb, that's what happens. You know, I mean, Joe, our hero, is faced with an impossible choice, right? You know, can she do the ultimate thing and sacrifice her own child to save others, to save herself, and to save that child's humanity? Because in many ways, killing her own son saves his soul, because there's still a little bit of humanity in him. But if she waits any longer, he will cease to be human.
Yeah, and wow, and I mean, and all that sounds very deep, and it just speaks to all of us. All of us have people who we love, and you also said that you're a dog parent, which which is perfect, sense that I also am a dog parent. We don't want to see our loved ones have to go through that, but sometimes you do have to make that hard choice to what is right and what's wrong. And I mean, honestly, hearing all that definitely makes me want to go see it even more.
Well, that's good. That's very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being a dog parent is it's funny because I raised 3 kids with my wife, and they basically are they're pretty much all out of the house. 2 are definitely out, and 1 is sort of semi out. And then we decided to go adopt and rescue 3 huskies. So we shot ourselves in the foot. It's like, because huskies are not the easiest. They need a lot of attention. So it's like we have 3 more kids. But anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, considering that, considering where I moved into, I actually have a friend of mine who actually has a husky, and so I could definitely testify. Yeah, they are a lot of work. Yeah. So, but yeah, anyways, thank you so much for answering that question. So, my next question: what's the relevance of the film's title?
Originally, it had a different title. It was a working title. Okay. It wasn't very good. It was Home, which is pretty basic and pretty general, and I knew it needed to be improved. But the reason that it originally was titled Home was because of the idea of sacrifice again. And where should you feel the most safe? At home. Yet if there's something happening in your own home environment that has made that environment now unsafe, right? Then how do you navigate that? Right. And so, so Home, it makes a lot of sense thematically, but it's not a good title. Right. And so then for, how can we make this better? And there's actually a line in the script where one of the characters, one of the evil characters, and we can talk about evil too, because there's different kinds of evil.
Yeah.
But he says, "Are you the wolf or are you the lamb?" Okay. And when we were looking for a title, I kept coming back to that line, and then one of our producers, Maya Smith, suggested, "Well, what if we called it The Wolf and the Lamb?" And then I said, "I like that." And then he went on to explain that it's actually an Aesop fable. And there's a lot of but it's interesting because we sort of reverse engineered it. I didn't first read Aesop's fable, The Wolf and the Lamb, and then get inspired by that. It was sort of the opposite, right? Where I created this world, I created these characters, I created this story. Aesop was not in my mind at all, yet there was a line in there that was referencing the wolf and the lamb. And certainly, like, a wolf is the predator, right? And the lamb is the prey. And in life, and when you're dealing with the monsters, and oftentimes the human being is really more monstrous than the monster. Okay. Like, you could say that Dr. Frankenstein is way more of a monster than actually the monster, right? Than Frankenstein's monster. Okay. So, and we're playing with that in the film too, because there's the primordial evil of the monster, in this particular case, the vampire. Yet there's the evil of the man. And the difference is pretty pretty stark, you know, because in a way, the monster has no choice. The vampire has to kill in order to survive. He's not choosing to commit evil or choosing to do something good or bad. He just is, or she is. Just like an animal, like a lion needs to kill a gazelle, just one, in order to survive, right? But it's man. Like the lion doesn't go out and commit genocide against the gazelles, nor does the vampire either, really. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it's man, not the vampire, that will choose evil. And so in our story, we have the primordial evil of the vampire, but we also have the evil of man, you know, like the industrialist that's trying to take over the town, the sheriff that is, you know, basically, deciding guilt before giving people a chance to prove their innocence. And these choices of evil is really, they're all wolves, really. Okay, they're all now what, but they're masking their predatory natures, maybe behind money, or maybe behind a fancy hotel, or maybe behind a badge in the sheriff's case, right? And so I like the idea of the wolf being beyond. The wolf is not just the monster, it's also man choosing to be the monster, right? And then the lamb doesn't always have to be prey. Like, just because you might be weaker, right, that doesn't mean you're not smarter, right? And maybe there is value in being the lamb. In Aesop's fable, the wolf definitely takes advantage of the lamb, and the lamb is the victim. Okay, but I think it's a lot more layered and a lot more complicated. And so in our film, we have like wolves, multiple wolves, and we have lambs. But sometimes some of the lambs then become wolves themselves in a different way.
Yeah, that's actually really intriguing about how it almost was going to be called Home. And I mean, I do understand logically why it almost was called that, but at the same time, when it comes to people who are going to be interested in your film, there definitely are people who are interested in horror movies, and there are those who aren't. But but as far as who are, you really want them to know this is a horror film, and I feel like that with Home.
You have no idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the thematically, like intellectually, symbolically, Home is great. You know, because one of the things I think that's really awesome is Home is 4 letters, and most addresses are 4 numbers.
Yeah.
Not all, but most are. You know, it might be like 7615 Applewood Way or whatever. But if you think about home is, everyone has one. Yep. And everyone has an address that they attribute to home. And if you start thinking about home as a place that's no longer safe, that's a really scary idea, right? But it's not a word that's necessarily visual. And so for marketing, in a marketing standpoint, you know, the wolf, everyone can see that. Everyone can see the lamb. Like already there are, and we work this is cinema, right? So we work in a visual medium, and I need to think about how does the title itself create an image in a potential, in a potential viewer, right? And how does it draw it in? And so that's another reason. So it all kind of just worked out. And what's even crazier is we were looking to get the URL, and usually like a film will do that, and it will be like thewolfandthelambfilm.com or thewolfandthelamb.movie.com, or probably thewolfandthelamb_movie.com. Yeah. Thewolfandthelamb.com was still available. Like no one had it. And so we were like, oh, it's even available. Well, that's definitely a sign. Let's title the movie.
Definitely. Yeah, honestly, I'm actually really surprised, knowing that name was available for a website. So, yeah. Wow. You learn something new every day, right? Yep. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for answering that. So, what made you decide to set this movie in the 1800s?
A couple of reasons. So originally it was going to be modern day. The heroine was going to be a potter. She was an artist or an artisan, and she worked with clay. Um, and then one of our producers, Chase Cooker, suggested this idea of going back in time. He did it just because he thought it would be cinematically interesting. The costume, the time period, all of that. Then I started thinking about it a little, and not that he's wrong about any of those things, but it intrigued me. And then I started thinking deeper about, well, how would it change the characters' understanding of what's happening? And it really, what got me to say yes to this idea had nothing to do with production, design, or location, or costume, or any of that. It was all because Bram Stoker had not written Dracula yet. And I was thinking about, like, okay, when you say vampire in 2000, and this project started in 2023, okay, and we went into production in 2024, but in modern times, like you say vampire, there's all these images, right? Because we've been living with the tropes of vampire for 150 years. But in the late 1800s, no one really knew what that was. It's not that there wasn't any like folklore around it in certain parts of the world, especially in Europe, but there was no novel. It wasn't part of popular culture at all. And I also thought, like, I never really loved, in vampire films or zombie films, especially when people get infected, they turn really fast. And I don't think that's how it would really happen. And I don't think people turn fast in life either when they're making choices about things. People are infected by other people slowly. And so I like the idea of the vampirism being more like a slow descent into darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Closer to something like rabies, where you get bit, you don't really have any symptoms right away, then you start getting symptoms, and it's a slower progression. And if it's a slower progression and it's happening in 1873 in a mining camp in the middle of Montana, after post Civil War, no one should like, the characters don't understand what's happening, because things are dying around them, and they almost feel like there's a curse on the town, but they don't understand that this is some kind of supernatural monster, right? Because there is no information that they can draw from, right? And so what's fun for obviously I'm I'm spoiling a few things here in this podcast, okay, but let's say that someone goes see the film, they're completely cold, they don't know anything. A couple of things will happen. They will either experience the narrative the way the characters are experiencing it, which is more of a mystery, as why are the animals dying? Why is there fog everywhere? Why are children missing? Like, what's happening? And when they do start to discover bodies, they're still going to be confused, just as the characters are. And then when they see the marks on the neck, the audience will know. And now the audience will know something that the characters won't know. And it's still fun for the audience, because now they have information, because we live in modern times and we know what the marks on the neck mean. Okay. But it's still a lot of fun to watch. The characters have no idea what that means. They're very confused about what's happening around them. And so I think depending upon, there's really the audience doesn't lose ever, because whether you know about the vampirism immediately, or whether you discover it later before the characters, or whether you figure it out in the very end with the characters, it's still a real fun ride for you, because it's not just a vampire film. It's a supernatural mystery that has horror and dramatic elements.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me of something what I believe Alfred Hitchcock once said. Like, he said, okay, imagine you are sitting in a room with people talking about baseball, and then underneath that table there's a bomb, and then you, the audience, knows that bomb's there because you see it, but the characters don't see it. since that they are too busy talking about baseball. But since that the characters don't know, but yet we, the audience, know, and it then causes that anxiety, going, oh my gosh, go, like, leave. There was that bomb there. Leave, leave, leave. So,
yeah, yeah, and that's true. Like in storytelling, like, there are lots of different perspectives. Like sometimes we know before the audience, sometimes we know with the audience, or with the characters. Sometimes we know before them, sometimes we know with them, sometimes we know after them. There's things that the characters know that we don't know. Another thing, though, that I really wanted to explore was that, instead of like the vampire just being like one being, I like the idea that it's more like a pestilence where it enters and it doesn't have to bite you, but like I think that animals are way more attuned to the natural world than we are, and so when we start our story, all the animals have already died, like the dogs, the cats, the horses, the cows, like they're all dead, and no one understands why. Like, but it's not because a vampire bit them; it's just because there's a presence of evil there, and in this, it's like a sickness that will like kill the plants and kill the animals, and it's just all very slow. And because it's all happening so slowly, people don't really notice it the same way as if you were like punched in the face, right? And then being post World War II or post Civil War, I think is also important because that is, it's, I mean, people don't realize how bloody of a war that was. I mean,
right.
we were in Vietnam for 17 years as a nation, and we had approximately 50,000 deaths. And just one battle, the Battle of Gettysburg, which took 3 days, there was 50,000 American deaths. Like the carnage of the Civil War is something that most people really can't. It's almost like it's hard to wrap your brain around. It's almost like trying to understand the universe. It's so massive, it's so big, and we destroyed ourselves. It's very much like the Phoenix, right? But in 1873, we're that Phoenix coming out of the ashes, right? We're being born again, but we're still pretty screwed up, right? And so I like the idea that this is a time where something like the vampire really could take advantage because everyone's just still kind of in survival mode, and people are and then the expansion of the West is happening, and there really are no rules, and there's no law, and there's no order, and it's a very I do think that people in general are good. Most people are good. But when you are in a situation where there's so many outliers that make it easier for others to choose the bad, then really bad things happen.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. And so yeah. Thank you so much for answering that question. Now, so how was it like to work with your cast?
I was very lucky. I mean, I kind of did everything you're not supposed to do, and I knew better. Like, don't have an ensemble cast, don't have a period piece, don't shoot on location in the middle of nowhere with no electricity that's 45 minutes away from the nearest town, don't have children, right? Like, the narrative has all of the things you're not supposed to do. That doesn't mean that you should never do that. I think be aware of the fact that those things are challenges. But the story came to me, and I decided to embrace the story and really just dive in completely head first and really allow the story to come out through me, instead of fighting it based upon what you're not supposed to do. Okay. And I say all that because with an ensemble, it's way harder because I had 15 principal characters. Okay. And that's a lot of actors. That's a lot of moving parts. That's just a lot. And we had an extremely tight schedule. really, honestly, an unrealistic schedule. We shot the entire film in 18 days. So
Wow.
think about that. Like, this is a massive, massive cast, and you're shooting an entire film, in 18 days. And also, you don't even have full days because there's travel time to get there, right?
Yep.
So, I was extremely lucky because my cast was awesome. I think there was never, and they knew this in advance. I told everyone in advance, we will have no time for rehearsal. I need you just to be ready always. And this is why you hire professionals. This is why you get SAG actors. This is why the casting process is so incredibly important. This is why finally, the Academy has given an Oscar to casting. It really is that important. I would tell you that, aspiring filmmakers oftentimes, sometimes I do talks, or I mentor people, and for many years when I was just a writer, and that's how I started as a writer, I would say the three most important parts of a film are the script, and the script. And then I would then say, I'm just really quoting Hitchcock because that's what he said. The script, and the script. The script is super important. Don't get me wrong.
Yep, it is. Yep.
But it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is the money. This, because you can't do anything without the money, all right? So,
Yep. Yep.
so like the money then determines like a lot of things. Like, okay, who can you hire, who you can't hire? What's your budget for casting? How many days can you actually? We should have shot it in 25. But we didn't have enough money to do that, so we had to figure out how to do it in 18 days, right? But I'm telling you all this because a lot of people think then like the next, because it's a visual medium. All right, so money's number one, script's number two, then it's got to be cinematography. No, it's casting. Casting is the next most important thing, because if I didn't have great actors that are seasoned pros that brought their A plus game every single day, that I needed to rely on them every time to nail it, we wouldn't have a film. We would never have made our days. It just would have been impossible. And I'm so grateful to all of them. I mean, many days, I'm sure the entire crew thought there's no way they're going to finish this scene. And I knew we could, only if I knew that my actors were going to be able to deliver. And never once did I have to reshoot something because of an actor, or do it over because of an actor, or change something because of an actor. It was, if weather was sometimes a problem, or maybe like it was a technical thing, or the camera movement didn't work right, or like all that stuff is happening. But the actors were amazing. And my favorite story actually is there was a scene with Sammy Rutibi, who plays the character of Saul, and Koryanka Kulcher, who plays Koryanka plays the character of Mary, and they're married. Mary and Saul are a couple, and this is a scene where Mary and Saul come over to Joe's house, and it's really a scene between the women, between Joe, our hero, our protagonist, and Mary, who is an ally of hers. And Koryanka and Sammy arrive, and Sammy says, "I don't think I should be in this scene." And I listen, and then Koryanka then expresses that he agrees with him and says, this is a scene between two women, and Mary is a powerful, independent, strong woman, and she doesn't need her husband to walk her over to this house to have a conversation with Joe. And as soon as Sammy and Koryanka explained this to me, or they didn't really even explain it, they just presented it to me, and I got it immediately, and they were 100% right. And I said, yes, you're right. But think about like how awesome that is for an actor to say, hey, I'm supposed to be in this scene. That's the way it's written. Yeah, he doesn't have any dialogue, but he's like present in the scene next to her, sort of as her companion, right? And to actually remove himself, all because his goal is not to, you know, not to just be the character. His goal is to do everything possible to serve the narrative. And so that was an awesome, awesome gift that Koryanka and Sammy provided, not just to me as the director, but really to everyone, because they were right. And you really need the best experiences will always be when people check their ego. It's not always going to happen. And I was very, very lucky that I didn't have to fight that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And and reminds me of a saying, I forget who it was, but I mean but yeah, someone said that when your audience is watching your movie, and if they don't genuinely believe that said actor, well, like, or said actress actually is said character up on the screen, the whole entire thing is just going to then fall apart. And so, and therefore, when you mention about how your cast is very, very important, yeah, it definitely is, because I've heard of some stories about how some people will just say their 2 cents about so and so movie, and they'll say, yeah, I feel like that actor was miscast, and yeah, and if someone says that they feel like that said character was miscast, that's not a good sign.
No, no, yeah. I mean, casting is an art, and we also had a child actor, Jaden Clark, and he plays the Joe, our hero's, our protagonist's son, and that was like maybe a 3-month process, 3 to 4 months. I can't remember exactly, but it was nationwide. We had a casting director, Jeremy O'Keefe, our casting director, did a massive, massive search to find the kid, the one kid, and there's one kid in our film, and he's like 11 years old, and the movie doesn't work at all if he's not cast right. And it was really amazing experience to, like, I mean, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of submissions that Jeremy went through. But for me as the director, it was a really, really exciting, positive, awesome experience to work with Jeremy. He provided me with, like, his top 30, and then I'd narrow that down to 15, and then there'd be callbacks, and then we get it down to 10, and then they're down to 5, and then I would start interacting with the 5, and at that point, it's not really about can they act. It's more about, like, well, who are they and what's inside of them, and in this film, I needed something extra. Like, I didn't need just a great kid actor. I needed a kid that understood trauma. I needed a kid that understood darkness. I needed a kid that had experienced some real pain. And because once you get down to like 3 to 5 out of 1,000, like, they can act, right?
Right.
But where you're going in this narrative and what's happening is pretty dark. And so, honestly, the X factor for Jaden was that his mother abandoned him when he was a child, and I don't know the reasons. I don't know why. I don't know the details around that, but I know that, and I knew that during casting. And his father, Jeff, is an amazing guy, I mean, I saw him every day. He impressed me so much, and Jaden is so lucky to have such a gift with Jeff as his father. But also Jaden he knows what loss is, and so when you have another child actor that's really, really talented, but he still thinks Santa Claus is a thing, I can't hire him, because it's like, I'm so happy that you have 2 parents and your life is so awesome that you really still believe in Santa Claus. Like, that's amazing. But you just can't do this role because it's too, you're too innocent, basically. Right. And so Jaden, I knew he could go to the places that I needed him to go to, because because I knew that he'd already experienced a lot of darkness.
If said person is going to play said character, they can't just, say their lines. They have to actually understand the character, who it is that they're playing. It's because if they don't actually understand the character, who it is that they're playing, well, and then the audience isn't actually going to buy into their performance. And I mean, as sad as it is, for a child to have to go through trauma, but at least, and it might sound weird to say this, but at least they then could turn that negative into a positive, such as, such as using all that for this movie.
Yeah, I knew Jaden was gonna kill it, because in the final, like, it was down to 3, and I had written a scene that's not in the film on purpose, because I wanted to see how they would. It was a scene where the character that Henry is the character's name, is his mother has died. That does not happen in the film at all. Okay, and he's at her grave, and he's basically giving a eulogy to his mother, and that's the only parent he has in this world of this character, right? So he's now alone, and he's talking to his mother's tombstone, basically. And so I had 3 kids. These are the final 3 kids, and this was all private, and we did it separate sessions, but they did it. They did their sides, and they were all very good. But then I would ask each kid to do it a little bit different. And with Jaden, because I knew about his past, I said, Jaden, I want you to, you're going to stay Henry, but the narrative's now a little different. It's not you're not kneeling at your fictional mother's grave. Your dad has gotten in a horrible car accident and died. And this is you as Jaden, and this is your dad, and this is real life. You're still going to do the sides. You're going to do it the same dialogue, but I want you to think about your father, who is the only person in your life that has got your back, right? And I asked him, I said, can you do that? And then he thought about it for like a couple seconds, and then he looked me straight in the eye and he goes, I can do it. Like, very much like that, like, I can do it. And then he did it, and it was so powerful. It was like, because he went to the real place, right? And so that was it. That is how he got the part, is that moment, because I knew that he had the ability to go completely raw, completely real, to strip it all away, because I needed that emotion, and he delivered on set, he was great every time.
Awesome, yeah, and so I don't know if you ever got that filmed or anything, but say if you did, I definitely would be very interested in actually seeing that. So, but yeah, well, anyways, thank you so much for answering that. And so, how was it like using the Yellowstone Film Ranch?
That made things really, in some ways, much easier, because when you are shooting such a tight schedule, 18 days is almost unheard of for the size of the project. The fact that you're going to the exact same place every single day, and even though we're in lots of different locations, it's all for anyone that doesn't know, Yellowstone Film Ranch is a movie set. It is a movie Western set, in southeastern or southwestern Montana, near Livingston. But it doesn't have any electricity. So, like, everything is, you got to bring in generators, and there's a lot of extra sort of logistical things you need to have. But that made things easier, because you sort of feel like there's a home every day, it's the
Right.
same home, right? What makes it harder, of course, is just the travel in, the travel out, the catering, all of those kinds of things make it a lot more difficult. The weather is something that you can't really prepare for. I remember one day it was like 75, 80 degrees, and then it rained, and then it hailed, and then the sun came out again and it was like 70 degrees again, and then we had like freezing rain all in the same day. It was gnarly, you know, and but I would say the best part about the Yellowstone Film Ranch wasn't even the ranch. It was the crew. I had never worked with the crew before, and they were awesome. You know, the camera department, grip and electric, everybody. They were all the departments. A lot of our department heads were local too. Vicky Hale was our costume designer. She's local. Shelly Walker, production designer, local. I mean, the only department head that were not was our makeup, V Neal, who came from LA. She actually has 3 Academy awards.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so we were very lucky to have her. And our cinematographer was from Austin, but most of our crew was local, and I was extremely pleased, very, very happy with everybody.
They said it rained because I actually have a friend of mine who actually did get cast in like I believe it was an extra role, and so then therefore he and then said that he wanted a ride there, and so then I then gave him a ride, and then I was trying to find somebody to watch my dog, but I sadly couldn't find anybody to watch my dog, and so then therefore it ended up being me, him, and and my dog who came on set, and then I definitely do remember on the day that we were there, that there was rain, and everybody was forced to shut it down. It's because you just can't really, you just really can't get much done in the rain. And I can only imagine, just with all of that, knowing that tight schedule, that probably added a little bit of stress, I can imagine.
Yeah, yes, but I would say, like, there's a great the great American novel, Great Gatsby. There's a scene in, well, I don't know what chapter it is, but Jay Gatsby can control everything because he's extremely wealthy. He can buy his way out of anything, and he's trying to impress Daisy. She's supposed to come over, and he's gotten like his chauffeur there. It's like he's basically bought out all of the florists in town, and there's just hundreds of flowers everywhere, but it rains, and he's all pissed off. And the point, of course, is you can't control the weather. You can't control everything, and if you're upset about something that's out of your control, then you're the fool. All right. And so, yes, sometimes it rains when you're working and you're filming on location. And if there's a thunderstorm, you have to shut it down because safety is the priority.
Yep.
You could yell at everyone. You could be angry. You could be curse out, the higher power that is, or Mother Nature, whatever. But that accomplishes nothing at all. What you should do is prepare that sort of thing is going to happen. So when you're creating a shooting schedule, give yourself a little bit of flexibility so that you can pivot or punt things. But also, like, try to embrace the fact that you're in it. One of the things that makes the Yellowstone Film Ranch so awesome is the beauty that it's literally in 360 degrees around the whole set is beauty. I mean, you have mountainscapes everywhere. And so, things like that happened, but I tried my best to stay positive, to roll with the punches, to pivot, and to also like enjoy the rain when it happened, or laugh that that I don't know how we're going to get this next scene done, but we'll figure it out. And when you have that kind of attitude, it really does infect everyone else in a positive way. And we did. Like, we always figured it out, and we always made our days, and it wasn't easy. And sometimes we punted things, or cut things. Yeah, there's a lot of shots I didn't get, but no one's going to know that. The only person that will know that is me. Right. So what? Right. So, I think it is a beautiful location, and there's so much to offer, you know, just working in a place that has so much natural beauty around you.
I mean, considering that me and my dog like were on set like while when this film was being filmed, yeah, and I mean, you know, just those sets, especially, yeah, especially, sorry, yeah, that there with that tower, yeah, like it's just so elegant and just you know and it's hard to put into words of like you know just how gorgeous that you know like that building is and I can see why whoever made the poster for it you know chose you know like chose that building. It's because it just really helps to set the mood for like the overall mood. And yeah, and as far as the rain and hail goes, I mean unfortunately hail, that's very common in Montana. But hey, and I mean, we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to it.
Correct. Yeah, a great thing that I try to do is I try not to react. I try to respond. And in all of life, and I fail a lot. But I have a wonderful wife that reminds me to which is really, really helpful. But I'm also self-aware of that, you know, and I think, and that's true for anything, not just directing a film, like parenting, working in an office with colleagues, whatever, being a teammate, you know, in a sport, respond, don't react, you know, because it's reacting is more emotional. Responding is more analytical. It's more
It is.
pragmatic.
Yep.
It's more calculated. And when you think think before you speak, right? And then you're going to respond. But if you just start talking, you're probably going to react.
Yep. And I mean, people are free to say whatever they want, but they're not free though from the consequences.
Right. Yeah. And it's my job. I mean, my job is to lead. It's not, it's yes, it's to direct a film, but it's also to lead everybody through that process. Right. And so I'm, you know, if people see that I'm angry, or people see that I'm losing my cool, or people see that I'm frustrated, or whatever kind of emotional baggage that I might be carrying, if they see that, it will affect them in the wrong ways. And so I mean, it's true. Heavy he who wears the crown, and not everyone wears it well. And I think, you know, there's still a lot I need to learn. I don't understand, you know, every lens. I'm not really a technical director. I'm really good with story and actors, but I think I'm a good leader. And so that's way more important actually, because my job is to have a vision and to inspire everyone around me to bring their A game and do their best and to serve the narrative. And and I think I feel confident that I achieved that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, and I mean, I definitely would say that all of that is definitely stuff where you definitely should be very, very happy about. So but yeah, thank you for answering all that. So before making The Wolf and the Lamb, were you a fan of westerns and or horror films?
I grew up in the 80s. And so horror was sort of like impossible to not be influenced by.
Right.
But, you know, I think the 80s is sort of like, in a way, I don't know if it's the golden age of horror, maybe not, but for me it was. So, you know, like, you know, from 1981's The Evil Dead with Sam Raimi,
Yeah.
to you know, like even James Cameron's Aliens, right, which I think we could consider to be horror, sci-fi horror. And you've got like Cronenberg's The Fly,
Yeah.
I think 86, and then one of my favorite films is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Yes, masterpiece.
So,
Absolute
yeah,
masterpiece.
right. I was never really into the slasher stuff. Like I still don't really like it that much.
Okay.
I really think it's that interesting. But what I love about, like Cronenberg's The Fly, that's yes, there's some horror, and there's definitely some practical effects, but really it's really a drama, to be honest. You know, and same thing with like Poltergeist. It's a family drama. It's not like in your face gore at all. And the Thing certainly has some gore, but similar to The Wolf and the Lamb, you never see the Thing. And actually they don't understand what it is. And a lot of it is a mystery. It's sort of like a supernatural mystery drama that then hits you heavy with horror towards the end. And I love that. I like that I think our audience today is different. I know it's different. I mean, we have vertical entertainment through our smartphones. Our attention spans are shorter. I know that the algorithms are part of how creators are making decisions, and that we have less time to have more of a slower burn into something. I get all that. I do understand that. I mean, I understand, AVOD it also now is, you kind of have to like create things around commercials for AVOD, because you have to get them in the first 5 minutes or you lose them. I get all of that, and I understand that business, and I understand the model has changed. However, I am who I am. I experience what I experienced. I resonate with certain things, and like those examples I gave from the 80s, I think are really great. I think they still stand up today. I think put Cameron's Aliens up against any sci-fi horror film made today, it's still going to be better, I think. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And it's so much of it is because they are taking their time, and it is about the characters and about the relationships and about the dramatic conflicts that are and the layers woven between these characters. And so I would say that the horror films that influence me the most are really not in your face gore, blood, splatter, slasher. It's more of a story narrative that is more of a drama that has horror elements. And then, of course, when it comes to the Western stuff, I kind of learned that later. And I think there's sort of like two periods of Westerns that I think are the best. You have sort of the mid to late 60s, where you've got like Sergio Leone, right? Like the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in his trilogy, Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More. But really, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is sort of the crowning jewel of that. Plus, he had Once Upon a Time in the West, and I learned a lot from him. I love that he just will linger, and he will take his time with. And I get it that it's not for everybody, and in some ways, it's harder for the audience today. But I do think that there's something about the way that Leon would present those Westerns of the late 60s that helped us really kind of become infected by the world and be absorbed into the world. And then I think also a very different style of Western, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, George Roy Hills, and of course such a tremendous script by William Goldman. That's a 60s film, I think. It's like 69. And that's, again, character driven. Like this, it's not even really that Western. It's more of a buddy picture between, Paul Newman and Robert Redford with Western elements. But we care about the characters a lot. And so I would say, sort of like stylistically, as a director, the visual, tonal, and cinematic qualities that Sergio Leone brought to the spaghetti westerns of the mid to late 60s, and then the narrative storytelling that William Goldman and George Roy Hill brought with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid are big influences. But then I would say the second sort of period for me anyway is like the early 90s. And that's when we got, Dances with Wolves and Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, you know, which won the Academy Award. I mean, they both
Right.
were Academy Award winners, right? And again, it's the character. It's their character is there's violence in Unforgiven, but not as much as people think there is. Like it's actually a pretty slow burn, and you know, and you care about the characters, and so there's so much now that is very much about the plot, and I get that, you know, plot is more important in film than in television, but again, I'm not I'm not willing to sacrifice the characters just for the sake of plot.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. And I definitely would say all that definitely was very, very well said. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Would you ever consider making a sequel?
Only if a studio said, let's make it, right? I mean, I have an idea for a sequel. The only way this would ever happen is if, you know, the film is successful and has some longevity. Okay. So like, I think, how do you know if something's great or not? It really is very subjective. And my answer to that is, how long does it last? Does it have a shelf life? Like I'm talking about, you know, some of these films like The Fly and Aliens, and you might not like The Fly, but it's a great film, and because I'm talking about it still, and people know what I'm talking about, right? And so anything that has longevity, it's great. And so if The Wolf and the Lamb has some longevity, I'm not saying that people are going to say it's on the level of some of these other films that I'm referencing, but if it has some longevity, that means it has an audience. And if it has an audience, and if that audience builds through word of mouth over time, then there is some incentive, because now it's technically, you know, existing IP, and there's an audience that's interested. Then there's incentive to do a sequel. The way I would do it is very much like the Aliens franchise. So, you know, when Ridley Scott did Alien in the 70s, it was one alien. And then when Cameron came along, James Cameron in the 80s, and did Aliens, it was a legion of aliens, right? And so in this first film, The Wolf and the Lamb, we're really dealing with one entity, you know, one supernatural villain. In a sequel version, I would just expand that world and bring in the Horde, essentially. And because you know, some people do die in this film, but some do not. And so, you know, there's an opportunity for a handful of characters to reprise their roles.
Awesome. Yeah. And, you know, and that's one of the exciting parts about like horror film sequels, is that you would then go, oh, okay. And so for the next movie, is this character gonna make it, and so on and so forth. And you know, and there are some franchises where like said character will make it for so long, and they eventually want to catch them off guard, and they go, oh yeah, they were, you know, here for this long, see ya. Yeah, but yeah, well, I definitely do hope that this film definitely can achieve that, and yeah, and we just got to keep those fingers crossed, and yeah, and I guess we just got to see as to what the universe has to offer for that. And so,
yeah, dear friends, like, I mean, I think, you know, like we're very fortunate to have a great sales company, Concourse Media, and a wonderful, respected, long-lasting distribution company, Samuel Goldwyn Films. However, you know, this is not a studio film that has a massive marketing budget behind it, and so, you know, yeah, we are going to be dependent upon, in many respects, to word of mouth and to fans telling other people, this is a great film, you should see it, check it out. And if that happens over time, then, you know, the proof is in the pudding, right? You know, and there will be analytics to back that up.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, Any final words for the audience about this film?
I think what I'm hoping for is just a conversation. I definitely look. One of the things that I think's really interesting about the film is this idea of evil. That I had referenced earlier, and the difference between just evil that exists and the choice of evil. And I'm not saying that one is worse than the other. That's not. I don't have an agenda. That is not. This is not propaganda. This is just entertainment. However, what would really be, I think, like the ultimate success is people watch the film and they go to coffee, they have a drink, they're eating dinner, whatever, and they have a conversation, and that conversation is a discussion about some of the themes and some of the deeper ideas, and like the vampires of course is the worst. Well, no, he's just like an animal. He has to do what he has to do in order to survive. Like, I think maybe maybe the chief justice who is making decisions based totally on greed, maybe he's worse, right? Or no, the sheriff's like that. I think that would be really interesting for people to start exploring this idea of choice, because sin is a choice, really. Like, we as human beings, Mark Twain wrote an amazing essay. It's called The Lowest Animal, and the gist of it is that the human being, certainly we are the highest intellectually, okay, but because of our choice, because of our moral sense, which is also elevates us to this higher level. Animals don't have like moral senses, really. They don't have that, okay, but because we have that, we have the ability to choose. We can choose to commit sins. We can choose the bad or the good. We can choose to commit evil. And there is collateral damage to many when we make those bad choices. And yes, it's a vampire film that takes place in the late in 1873, but there's still parallels today when we start thinking about like choice. What's worse? The choice of committing the bad, or no choice at all, right? I think maybe the choice is worse, right? So that's really kind of, I mean, again, that's a little bit heady. A lot of people are not going to kind of go that far, but if a conversation erupts, if someone sees this and they start exploring some of the thematic ideas a little bit, then to me, it's a piece of art that is a gift that deserves to be on this little blue marble that we live on.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I definitely feel like that can add, to this film's life, even after it is shown in theaters. And yeah, it's because there are films that came out over 100 years ago, like such as the original Nosferatu. But I mean, those movies still are talked about to this very day. It's because it has given people things to still, it's still giving things for people to still talk about. So
exactly, yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. But yeah, I definitely will leave links for people to follow the film and to you and to your websites. And so, yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Eric.
Of course. Yeah, of course. You have a fantastic day.
Before I let you all go, I just want you all to be aware of where you can go watch The Wolf and the Lamb on these streaming services.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. Stay scared and stay Cineified.